So what's going on, guys? DIY Dan here again, and this is another mechanical video. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to replace the hood shocks on a 2011 Mercury Grand Marquis. However, the concept is identical no matter what vehicle you have, if it does have these style of nitrogen charged shocks to hold the hood up. It's also the same concept for toolboxes that go in the beds of pickups. They're also pretty commonly used in campers or RVs for cabinets or beds, and for the back hatch door of SUVs as well. I'm also going to go over the information you will need to know in order to order these if you can't do it by application. So let's get to it. So when you would go to pop the hood on this vehicle, sometimes it wouldn't even pop up enough where you could get your hand underneath it to lift up the hood. I actually had to use a screwdriver a couple times in order to get it up enough where I could get my hand underneath it. Or when it's in the up position, it won't hold itself up, which can be dangerous because if you go under that hood and that hood falls down on you, that's a bad day. The only thing you need in order to change these out is a small flathead screwdriver and an extra set of hands to help support the hood while you change them out. Obviously, you can get these at any place that carries auto parts. I ended up getting mine off of Amazon. All I did was plug in my year, make, and model of this vehicle and put in hood shock or strut, and they popped right up. So before doing this on the actual vehicle, I'm going to show you a close-up of what you need to do on the shock itself. And then once again, this is the same for any of these shocks. So right here, I'm using a small flathead screwdriver. You could also use a pick, and getting underneath the spring-loaded clip that holds these shocks in place. All you need to do is leverage that clip away from the shock, either by twisting the screwdriver or just prying away from it a little bit, and then pull on that shock while you do that. You could also pry the spring-loaded clip all the way off if you choose to, but it's not really necessary. It only has to pry out just a little bit, and it will pop off of the pivot ball on the vehicle. Now, some of these shocks might have a little different style of spring clip, but the concept remains the same. You need to pry that spring clip back to release it from the pivot ball, and it will come off. So right here, I've got one of my daughters helping support the hood on the other side of the vehicle. And I decided to go ahead and pull that spring-loaded clip all the way off of that one. And then I got that screwdriver underneath the other spring-loaded clip, pried it out a little bit, and then pulled that hood shock off of the vehicle. You might be thinking, I can support the hood and do this at the same time, and you might be able to, but a lot of times there's one good shock and one that's completely bad. So if you go to take the good one off first, there's going to be nothing holding the weight of that hood. And some hoods are a lot heavier than what you would think they are. So obviously, if you don't have somebody to help you out, please prop that hood up with some type of a piece of wood or a clamp or something to support the weight of that hood before you remove either one of the struts. And keep in mind, if you are propping that hood up with something, it needs to be propped up all the way in order to get the new shocks on. You will not be able to collapse these shocks in order to do them if the hood is not completely open. For example, this is one of the shocks I pulled off of that hood on that vehicle that wasn't holding it up very well. And right here, you can see I'm putting all my body weight on this and it's barely collapsing it. So there's two things that are very critical if you need to order these and you can't do it by application. The first is the length of the shock. The other is the poundage of the shock. Usually the poundage will be labeled right on the shock if it's not too worn out to see. If you need to measure it out to match it up, you want to measure total length from the center point of each pivot ball location on the shock. So this shock was 19 3/4 of an inch, center to center. That's usually all you will need to order up the correct shock. However, if you want to check the collapsed length, then you can either approximate where that pivot ball would be when it's fully collapsed, or subtract the length of the actual rod on the shock and subtract that from the total length of the shock. So both of those things are very critical when ordering up these nitrogen charged shocks. If you end up ordering too long of a shock, then your hood or whatever you're using it on might not go all the way to the closed position. And if you order one with too light a poundage, the hood might still not stay up on its own. And if you get too heavy of a poundage, the hood or toolbox lid that you're using it on might be a lot harder to push down into the collapsed position. Once you get the old shocks off, there are no tools required to put the new ones on. All you have to do is line up the end of the shock with that pivot ball on the vehicle and snap it into position. When removing the shock, make sure you take note of the orientation of it so you can put it back in the same direction that you took it off. Once snapping the cylinder side of the shock onto the hood, you can rotate the rod end of the shock to get it lined up properly so you can snap it in position. you should be able to hear a little detent sound telling you are popped in all the way, and that's all there is to it, guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video and it gave you some good information. If so, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I'd really appreciate it. The whole concept of my channel is to give you guys the most information in the least amount of time as possible, so I don't waste your time. And I hope to see you next time. Have a good one. Later.